Good morning, church. Hopefully by now you know that Church Council has announced July 12th is our regathering for in-person worship date. We're excited to be in the room with you, but precautions have to be taken. All of those precautions are detailed out on our website, as well as in the past two soundings. We need the full cooperation of everyone so everyone can worship safely. Please go and read those protocols, but I will mention just a few. We will be doing temperature checks at 3 different entrances. Anyone with a fever of 100 or more will not be allowed to enter. We are also requiring that all people wear masks, ages 3 and up, and everyone has to sit in designated seating. If you don't feel that the risk of gathering together is worth it for you or your family, we will still be broadcasting and emailing out and archiving all of our worship services on YouTube and Facebook. You will always have a weekly worship service available to you. Also, part of being able to do in-person worship means we will require volunteers. On our website, you will notice opportunities to serve. Due to the sensitive nature of people feeling comfortable or not in worship, we're not asking our former teams, like ushers, to serve in their normal capacities, but rather we're just asking anyone and everyone to sign up and volunteer for a specific duty on a specific day. Instructions for each of those duties are explicitly described, and we will also be touching base with you each week that you're signed up from our office. Now, you can sign up for more than one. Just know it's going to take several of us to keep this going for the next several months. Finally, I want you to know it is not lost on me that Pastor Larry is now in his final month. At the end of this month, he will be retiring from gospel ministry. If you'd like to join us in giving Pastor Larry a love offering, you can mail checks to the church and earmark them Larry's love offering. This is just one great way we are showing our appreciation for his leadership, his friendship, and his wisdom that he has shown us over these many years. Now, let us go to God together in worship.
The same road for miles and miles. You've been hearing the same old voice tell the same old lies. If you're trying to feel the same old horse inside, then there's a better life. There's a better life. You got pain. He's a pain taker. You feel lost. He's a way maker. You need freedom, safe there. And he's a prison shaking savior. You got chains. He's a chain breaker. We've all searched for the light of day in the dead of night. We've all found ourselves running out from the same old fire. We've all run to things we know just ain't right. When there's a better life, when there's a better life. You got pain, he's a pain taker. You feel lost, he's a way maker. You need freedom, safe and he's a prison shaking savior. You got chains, he's a chain breaker. You believe it, you receive it, you can feel it, somebody testify. You believe it, you receive it, you can feel it, somebody testify. You believe it, you receive it, you can feel it, somebody testify. You believe it, you receive it, you can feel it, somebody testify. You got pain, he's a pain taker. You feel lost, he's a way maker. You need freedom, safe and he's a prison shaking savior. You got chains, he's a chain breaker. You need freedom, safe and he's a prison shaking savior. You got chains, he's a chain breaker.
Matthew 14, verse 13 through 21. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion from them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and now the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not to go away. You give them food to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds, and all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over from the broken pieces, 12 baskets full, and those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children.
Hi, I've got my lunchbox here. You might have a lunchbox too. And in my lunchbox, I could have different things, and you might have different things. I've got an apple today. I've got a little container with some carrots today, and a little granola bar in my lunchbox. Well, today we're going to talk about a kid, a boy, who didn't have a lunch box, but he had a lunch basket. It probably wasn't this big, but it probably looked a lot like this. It was probably woven from reeds or grasses. Probably had some sort of a handle like this. And this boy had his lunch basket. And this boy met Jesus. So it was a long time ago. In his lunch basket, he didn't have carrots and an apple and a granola bar, because they had other things where he was living. And during that time, they had a lot of times bread. And I didn't have a real fish to put in my basket because it might smell a little bit. But they ate a lot of fish where this boy lived. Well, you might wonder, where was this kid with a lunch basket where he was meeting Jesus? Well, this is the story of feeding the 5,000. And in this story, this boy was in a group of people, a huge group of people. They say 5,000 or more. That's a lot. And they were following Jesus, listening to him. They couldn't get enough of what he was telling them about God, about God's love, about how to treat each other, how to accept each other. Whew. They were there all day, and they were hungry. Everybody was hungry. Well, Jesus was ready for a little break, probably. He probably was hungry too. And his disciples said, "Let's send everybody home so we can all have a break. They can eat, we can rest." But guess what Jesus said? No. These people, they're hungry. We need to feed them, but look at them. They want to learn. They want to be here with us. They want to hear all about God. I can't send them away. I've got so much more to teach them. And we all know you can't learn when you're hungry, right? So he said, go find something. Go find something for us. The disciples probably thought, where are we going to find it? It's not like they had a Burger King or a McDonald's around the corner. Jesus said, try, go look. Well, that's where the boy comes in. This boy, he had his basket. And in his basket, he had some bread, and he had some fish, and he was willing to share it. It wasn't much, and it could have been for his whole family. I really don't know, but Jesus needed it, and he shared it. Just a boy shared what he had. Jesus said the blessing over that little basket with some bread and fish, and something pretty amazing happened. Suddenly, there were lots of fish to eat. Suddenly, there was lots of bread to eat. Enough that everybody could get some. That one gift, sharing what he had, ended up feeding 5,000 people. That's a lot. Well, I love this story, not just because Jesus cared about people's physical needs like eating, as well as teaching them about God, but it teaches us about sharing what we have. That one little boy, people probably didn't even think he would matter, but he sure did, because he shared. And that's what we need to do. What we have, if we can, we share the gifts, whatever those gifts might be. So today, in honor of this little boy who shared his lunch, his one little lunch, I thought, what can I do? And then I thought of it. I'm going to share too. I brought some other kinds of bread, and I bought some cans of tuna fish, and I filled up my lunch basket today. And guess where I'm going to put it? In our blessing box. It's a little thing, but it's not a hard thing. And it's a way that I can share something that I have. So today, maybe you can think of something that you can share to help others in some way. It doesn't have to be big, but we all can do something. Just like this one little boy.
Filled with joy and endless praise, to our
of the 5,000. It's the only miracle that happens in all four Gospels. And all the things that Jesus does and says, and with all the things that people see him do, this is the miracle most often remembered and recorded in the Gospels. And rightfully so. It's an amazing story. It says so much to us who are still caught in liminal spaces. And think about it. These people in the story, they're on a deserted place with Jesus. They're there all day. And the disciples know that these people need to leave so they can go get food. People are starving. All of them are in liminal spaces. They can't stay where they are. They're in the in-between. Now, we say that this is the feeding of the 5,000, but verse 21 acknowledges that this number is for men only, and there's women and children present too. So let's just say for fun that half of the men there brought families. Those half average 2 kids per family. If you just do the math that way, we're at 12,500 human bodies who need to eat. This is a huge crowd that's clearly not practicing social distancing. But imagine 12,000 people marching towards something, towards someone, looking for a change to the old system, a change in leadership. They're looking for hope. But why? Because Jesus is healing everybody. Verse 14. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. This is the first thing we need to see. People are following Jesus because they see him as someone who leads with compassion. He meets people where they are, as they are, but doesn't leave them there. This is the mark of an amazing minister. And it's something I've stressed to our staff over the years as the kind of ministerial staff we should want to be. The truly great ministers meet people where they are, as they are, but not to leave them there. They draw people forward, closer to God. Pastor Larry has this ability. He has a story for everything, which means he can meet people where they are, as they are. But he doesn't leave us there. Over his tenure here, he's brought us along, challenged us, served us, loved us, crafted in us sacred spaces we didn't even know we had. Larry retires at the end of this month after 44 years of full-time Christian ministry. He is what a great servant leader looks like. Now, before he goes and gets too big of a head, the difference between Larry and what Jesus actually does in Matthew 14 is Jesus heals people's illnesses. Larry can't do that. Jesus can, and he did. Jesus gave what he had to help the people around him. He was led with compassion, and he gave what he had to give. This is such an important point. Christians who seek to imitate Christ must be people who lead with compassion, ready to give what they have to those in need. And because Jesus does this, he earns the right to speak to the crowd. And this is the second thing that we need to see. Have you ever noticed that those who speak the most clearly into your soul do so because they've earned the right to speak into your life? Larry's done this. When Larry speaks to a crowd, it carries a certain gravitas. His words have substance. I could say the same sentences that he says, but they land differently in the room. Why? Because Larry's seasoned. He's put in the time serving. He's earned the right to be heard because he's modeled his career after Jesus and became a servant leader. I remember coming on the scene 5 years ago. I had a lot of words, a lot of thoughts and ideas that I needed to share because then you'd be impressed by me if I could just get in front of you and say the right words. As it turns out, that's not how you lead people. Larry's taught me that. And probably he never even knew he did. Words are not how you make friends. It's not how you ignite a movement. It's not how you lead people. Service is. Helping people become servants is. Larry knew this. First Baptist has also taught me this. The mission work that we've done over the last 3 months is extraordinary. We keep showing up. We keep serving. It's because this church knows the value of seeing the world with compassion and giving what we have to give. Now, I will say this. Words do matter. Every major movement in human history has had a central figure who orates and motivates the masses. Words matter. The central aspect of our Christian faith is corporate worship, and worship centers around people reading and interpreting words. How we say things and when we say things matters. But those words sound the best and are heard the clearest when the person saying them has earned the respect of the people hearing them. This is what it looks like to love people where they are, as they are, but not leave them there, because you give what you have to those who need it. Jesus does this perfectly in Matthew 14. He spends all day healing people, and then he speaks. Verse 15. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is the deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." And Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." And they replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and he blessed and broke the loaves. And he gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. There's so much good here. When the numerology, 5 and 2 making a holy 7, and then for it to be blessed and it turns into the holy number of 12, in some ways this matters. The overflowing baskets brings back the abundance and scarcity conversation from 2 weeks ago. This matters. There's always enough for everyone when we encounter Christ. There's so many cool ways to think of this story. You can even think of it historically. Jesus is often considered and said to be the one whom the prophets wrote about. If you remember from 2 Kings 4, Elisha feeds a multitude, but feeds them barley. Now maybe Matthew 14 is Jesus' way of saying, I'm the new Elisha, and I don't give out the least expensive peasant food of barley, I give bread and fish. This matters. Now you could look at this story through a social study lens. Everyone eats their fill, and then there's leftovers. This matters. Think about some of Jesus' other miracles. He turns water into wine and leaves massive amounts of wine left over. The disciples haul in a great catch of fish more than once where it almost breaks their nets. There's more fish than they could eat in a lifetime. He spreads 3/4 of his seed on ground he knows won't take because he has so much to spare. And now this one. There's 12 overflowing baskets. This matters. With Jesus, it's about abundance. He teaches us that God's love comes to us in abundance through compassion. God's love meets us where we are, as we are, but never leaves us there. This matters. A few years ago, I came across a social scientist who posed a new theory about this story. I can't shake it out of my mind. It's too good. Now, what I'm about to say is not meant to replace the biblical or historical account of the story in any way. It's just an intriguing take on the story. What if the miracle is not that food appeared out of nothing, but that people instead were moved by the Spirit and Jesus' compassion to give what they had for the good of the group? Ponder this. What if the 12,500 people who chased Jesus down on foot anticipated a long day? So they too brought with them a snack or a meal. And what if, following Jesus' servant leadership, they too gave to the group what they brought? 12,500 people offering their resources for the good of the group. It's possible, even probable. Would it be any less of a miracle? I don't think so. Last week, the school system unveiled its COVID-19 plan for the fall. If you haven't heard, our kids will be going 2 days a week to school and then at home virtual learning the other 3. If you're wondering, what are families going to do? Well, I'll tell you as a father, we're asking that question too, and there are very few good answers. What I do know is this: the coronavirus is not done with us. It's here for a while longer, and we're going to be affected by what our schools have decided. Thousands of kids from thousands of families are now juggling what to do next. This is liminal space. How will our community balance work and teaching from home and virtual learning? You can imagine the anxiety this produces for everyone. And it's not the school system's fault. There's not one person in that head office that wants this to actually be reality. But here we are. We're in this. And this is another moment of liminality affecting our entire community. So how best do we move forward in faith? And before I answer that, I want to say it's not just the school system. With the death tolls rising daily, positive cases of COVID-19 rising daily, over 50,000 new cases daily on a national scale this week alone, there's tons still affected and are wondering how to step forward in faith. Think about senior adults in nursing homes, small business owners, non-essential personnel who are still furloughed, first graders still trying to read, parents who work 9 to 5, daycare workers who have incredibly strict guidelines they have to follow. I mean, even this week, the PPP grants end for some who didn't extend, which means families will start losing paychecks that they were getting for the last 2 months. I mean, this liminal space that we're in, it is frightening and maddening, and it's prolonging, and it affects us all. So how do we move forward? Jesus shows us. We move forward with compassion. We give what we have in order to meet people where they are, as they are, never intending to leave them there. And this is what we must take with us today. We're in a world in which resources do seem scarce. Restaurants are closing, businesses are closing, jobs are being lost, work is hard to come by. It's scarce. We're all asking, do we have what we need? It might be that I don't have enough, but we do. As a community, we have things we can give. We can collect and give out. We can donate and serve. I think about us at First Baptist. We have space. We have educators. We could offer what we have for the good of those who need it. We can serve. Now, First Baptist can't serve thousands every single day, but we could give what we have and then pray that others will come alongside of us and do the same. We could all offer our resources for the good of the community. It's possible, even probable. Would it be any less of a miracle than what took place in Matthew 14? I think not. Imagine this. What if every family in Waynesboro had food to eat and their kids have a place to learn on the days off they're not in school? To do something on this scale would be a miracle. Well, I just happen to be someone who believes in miracles. And I just happen to believe God uses the willing to be miracles in others' lives. All we have to do is give what we have and to do it with compassion for the good of the group. Perhaps what Matthew 14 can teach us is that miracles happen because good people like you decide scarcity is no longer going to be your framework. Unity is, love is, abundance is. For what happens to you affects me, and our love is shown best when we serve one another. This is how we step forward out of liminality. And Jesus models this for us when he breaks bread in verse 19. Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves, gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. We take what's ours, offer it to God as a blessing. God breaks it in order for it to be given. And somehow in this process, all people will be served. I'm not asking First Baptist to be Jesus. Jesus is already with us. I'm asking you to be a participant from the crowd. Let's give what we brought to the good of the group and let God bless it. Let God serve through us. Let us be servant leaders. We are a part of God's miracle working business, not because we come up with it, but because we surrender to it. When we offer what we have to those in need, we reflect the love of Christ in the world. And when others see this kind of love, they start reflecting it too. This is how miracles happen today. And it starts with you.